The sleeping bag was still warm when Anna Nantais vanished from the Grayton Beach campground in Florida, a town with a mere population of 392. The June weekend getaway arrived with humid sea breezes and dim moonlight draping the white sands of the Gulf of Mexico. At 11:32 p.m., neighbors in the adjacent tent site saw the 19-year-old Florida State University student step out of her tent, holding a red jacket, saying she wanted to take a short walk along the water's edge. That jacket was a birthday gift her mother had mailed just 2 weeks before the trip. The last person to see her, her boyfriend, said she smiled, waved, and then faded behind the low pine trees along the shore. What happened in the hours that followed would haunt Grayton Beach and the entire state of Florida for more than 2 decades afterward. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. In the summer of 2001, Grayton Beach State Park, a pristine stretch of coastline along Florida's Gulf of Mexico, was drenched in golden sunshine and the salty tang of the sea. In the final days of June, the area was typically quiet, except for a few groups of students choosing to camp overnight amid the white sands, the shoreline pine trees, and the ceaseless crash of waves against the rocky barriers. Among those pitching tents that weekend was Anna Nantais, 19 years old, a sophomore at Florida State University. She was the open, adventurous type who loved the ocean and always carried a small camera to capture every moment. Accompanying her was her boyfriend Jim Alt, 20 years old, an engineering major and a skilled surfer from the Gulf Coast region. They, along with 2 other couples, had driven from Tallahassee to Grayton Beach to unwind before summer exams. That evening, the air was still, moonlight casting a silvery path across the water, and the group of students gathered around a campfire, playing soft music and grilling food. Everything unfolded normally. No one noticed anything unusual. As the night grew late, the groups gradually retreated to their tents, leaving only Anna and Jim near the water's edge, talking more about plans for returning to school. By early morning, when the others woke up, Anna was gone. Jim said he awoke to an empty space, the sleeping bag ice cold, and only wind-erased sandmarks around. He called her name, ran along the beach, asked nearby camping groups, but no one had seen her leave. A few personal items remained untouched in the tent, with no signs of a struggle or any cries for help heard during the night. As the sun rose higher, Jim hurried to the ranger station near the parking lot to report that his girlfriend had disappeared. The morning shift ranger took the information, returned with him to the scene, and verified the situation. No one in the area remembered seeing Anna after the previous evening. By midday, after scouring the beach and finding no traces, the ranger station officially notified the Walton County Sheriff's Office, marking the start of a bizarre missing person case on what seemed like a safe and familiar Florida beach. The information was relayed through the county's internal communication channels. An hour later, a pickup truck bearing the Walton County insignia pulled up at the park entrance. Lieutenant Mason Green, in charge of the coastal area, stepped out with 2 officers and a forensic technician under the intense early summer sun. They met the ranger who had called it in, listening as he summarized, "A young woman vanished overnight. Her boyfriend was the one who discovered it, and the scene remained undisturbed." Green ordered everything preserved as is, while yellow nylon tape was strung to cordon off the students' camping area. Jim Alt, the one who reported it, was invited to the ranger cabin for questioning. He looked exhausted, clothes dusted with sand, eyes red from lack of sleep. In the initial statement, Jim said he woke up in the middle of the night to find Anna no longer beside him. He thought she had just gone for a walk, but after searching the beach and calling out with no response, he went to report it as dawn broke. Green recorded the full account, asking further about their relationship, Anna's mood before the trip, and whether she might have left voluntarily. Jim insisted they hadn't argued, and she had no personal issues that would make her leave alone. The others in the group were asked to stay for statements. They agreed that Anna had been completely normal the previous evening, talking, eating, then sitting with Jim late into the night. No one heard screams or saw strange lights on the beach. The forensic team proceeded to photograph the entire scene, collect sand samples, and examine the surrounding area. Everything in Anna's tent, backpack, wallet, shoes, clothes was still there. Only her thin jacket and cell phone were missing. Green noted this, while dispatching a team to sweep along the shoreline for physical traces. Afternoon winds blew strongly, covering footprints in sand, quickly erasing any potential clues. By the end of the day, the search radius expanded by several hundred meters, but yielded nothing. As dusk fell, the camping area was fully sealed off, with only the yellow glow of police vehicle lights reflecting on the sand. Lieutenant Green signed the order to open an official file, classifying it as missing person, cause undetermined, case number WCSO-01174. He directed night shift units to monitor the coastal areas and contact highway checkpoints in case the girl was lost or taken by someone. Before leaving the scene, he paused to gaze along the darkening beach, where waves continued to methodically erase all traces of the previous night. No evidence of violence, no reasonable explanation, just a void between sand and water, where a person vanished without leaving any sign beyond absolute silence. After the scene was secured, the Walton County Sheriff's Office officially launched the initial investigation phase. Lieutenant Mason Green directed a team focused on verifying the victim's personal information and those connected to her. From records provided by the family, Anna Nantais was a sophomore at Florida State University, majoring in communications, with no criminal record, prior incidents, or signs of psychological instability. University records and classmates all indicated a stable life, normal social relationships, no debts, and no involvement with stimulants. Police also contacted her parents in Gainesville. They confirmed Anna had never left home unannounced before. Her relationship with boyfriend Jim Alt was rated positively by family and friends. They had been dating for over 8 months, often seen together at classes and school events. Green ordered officers to map Anna's social relationships in the 2 months prior to the trip to rule out personal conflicts. All results were normal. No one had a motive to harm her. The next investigative direction focused on 3 possibilities: the victim left voluntarily, met with a tidal accident, or was affected by another person. Weather data from the Gulf Coast Meteorological Station showed that on the night of the incident, high tide peaked around dawn, with southeast winds averaging 10 knots and strong currents heading out to the Gulf. The possibility of being swept away couldn't be ruled out. Yet the first day's marine search found no items or body drifting. Experts also noted that in a drowning accident, a body might surface within 2 to 3 days, but this area was sheltered from wind with many deep sand channels, making currents unpredictable. Green ordered continued shoreline monitoring, but didn't halt on shore information gathering. Those who came with Anna were summoned again for detailed statements. They recounted the evening sequenced dinner, sitting around the fire, then pairs splitting off to sleep. No one remembered exactly when Anna and Jim separated from the group. One of the 2 female friends said around midnight she heard loud waves and thought someone was playing on the beach, but didn't think it unusual. When asked, Jim Alt confirmed he heard no cries for help or impacts. He was still kept in the park area for coordination, but at this point police didn't consider him a suspect. To check voluntary departure, Green had highway checkpoints and nearby bus stations swept. No records of a girl matching the description. Anna's phone was sent to the tech lab, but data couldn't be extracted as her model didn't log locations. The investigation gradually hit a dead end. On the second evening after the report, while reviewing the list of public safety personnel at Grayton Beach the previous night, Green noticed an anomaly. The beach patrol team's report noted that Deputy Harold Dunn's Jeep left the duty station at 10 p.m. for checking the western shoreline area. This was nearly 6 hours before the disappearance was reported. By protocol, every patrol must have stop points, return time to station, and specific reasons. However, in Dunn's duty log, the return time entry was blank. Green had someone call Dunn, who confirmed he was on routine patrol, nothing unusual detected. He said he saw torchlight and laughter from the student group in the distance, but didn't approach. When asked why no return time was logged, Dunn replied, "Busy assisting with a few urgent matters." This explanation was noted but not further verified, since he was law enforcement with seniority and a good reputation. Green still flagged this detail in the internal report as needing verification. By the third day, the marine search phase ended. They found no items of Anna's beyond a few old footprints mixed with other visitors. No direct witnesses, no surveillance cameras, no biological evidence on site. The disappearance left almost no clear traces. In the summary sent to the county, Green noted, "Scene shows no signs of attack, robbery, or intentional harm. Victim may have met with an unintended accident or been affected under undetermined circumstances." The report ended with a short, cold line, "No clear criminal basis. Continue monitoring." After 3 days of on-site investigation with no specific findings, the Walton County Sheriff's Office decided to launch a large-scale search operation. Lieutenant Mason Green was assigned to command the scene, coordinating with the Marine Rescue Team and Rangers. The plan unfolded in 3 directions: the western shoreline, the pine forest north of Grayton Beach, and the marshlands emptying into the Gulf. Early morning, dozens of officers, volunteers, and rescue personnel gathered at the park parking lot. Many locals had followed the case in local papers and volunteered. The technical team used detailed topographic maps to divide the search area into 200-meter grid squares, each team responsible for sweeping a specific zone. Along the shore, 2 patrol boats coordinated with a Florida State Police helicopter flying in semicircles, observing from above for drifting anomalies. On land, 2 cadaver dogs trained in human scent were brought in, starting from the tent where Anna vanished. Each afternoon, as winds shifted, the search teams repeated the process. Professional divers from Destin were mobilized, diving along submerged sand channels about 100 meters offshore, where tides often carry light objects outward. In the first 3 days, results were negative. No personal items, no clothing, no signs of a drifting body. Summer currents flowed fast and shifted directions constantly, making precise search radius determination nearly impossible. Lieutenant Green ordered expansion into the pine forest behind the sand, connecting to trails leading into Point Washington State Forest. Search teams moved in lines 10 meters apart, probing sand mounds with iron rods, checking tree hollows, trash piles, and small ponds. Thick mud and dense mosquitoes made movement difficult. Many volunteers withdrew after half a day. In the report to headquarters, Green noted, "No evidence or traces indicating victim left the area on foot." Another direction opened eastward to the small local fisherman's boat dock. Boat owners were interviewed, but none saw any unfamiliar girl that night. Police also queried stores and gas stations within a 20-mile radius. Staff said no one matching the description bought anything during that time. The helicopter continued circling for 2 more days, using infrared cameras to scan for heat signatures or unusual sand disturbances. But footage showed only ocean waves and dense vegetation strips. Another unit investigated along creeks leading to the Gulf, where currents might carry small objects. They probed mud with iron poles, checked drifting logs, but found only trash and seaweed. Walton County Sheriff Raymond Cole personally arrived on the 5th day to monitor progress. He asked Green for a detailed report, stressing all possibilities must be considered, but resources were limited and couldn't extend indefinitely. Meanwhile, Anna's family from Gainesville had arrived at the park, bringing photos of their daughter to assist search efforts. They were asked to stay in a designated area, not directly join sweeps. The situation grew bleaker daily. By the 8th day, after covering nearly 15 miles of shoreline and the entire northern forest, the search force had to narrow operations. No findings of investigative value. All collected objects were sent to labs but unrelated to the victim. Rescue teams reported that if the victim was swept away, chances of finding a body after a week were near zero. At the end of the 9th day, the operation suspension order was issued. The scene was unsealed, leaving only boundaries for future forensics if needed. In the brief closing meeting, Lieutenant Green stated clearly that the case would continue under investigation, but large-scale search was no longer effective. The summary report recorded over 20 square miles of land and sea swept, 112 participants, 7 helicopter flight days, and 4 deep dives, yet no evidence or body directly related to Anna Nantais. The final line in the late-evening summary to the sheriff's office was neat and cold as a temporary conclusion. Search operation concluded. Results undetermined. Recommend continued investigation into unclear disappearance cause. After the official search operation ended, the Walton County Sheriff's Office shifted focus to forensic examination and evidence analysis at the scene. Lieutenant Mason Green directed the forensics team to re-sweep the entire Camping Beach area where Anna Nantais was believed to have disappeared. Though the site had been affected by wind and tides for days, technicians still attempted to reconstruct based on initial photos and witness statements. They used distance measures, marking tent positions, fire pit, folding chairs, and disturbed sand boundaries. A 10-meter radius circle around the tent was designated central. On the sand surface, some tire impressions remained faintly wind-covered, but patterns indicated off-road Jeep tires. Technicians noted and compared to samples from the beach rescue Jeep assigned to Deputy Harold Dunn. Tire type matched in size and tread. But since patrol vehicles frequently entered the area, it couldn't yet be direct evidence. Green ordered detailed photos, plaster casts of the 2 clearest tire segments, numbered WCSO01EV17A. In Anna's tent, technicians collected a few small green fabric threads stuck to the sleeping bag edge, plus a long hair on the sand nearby. All sealed in specialized bags, labeled, signed by collector. Sand around the sleeping bag was sampled at 3 depths for organic composition, in case of body fluids or microscopic blood. They also checked suspected footprint depressions, but samples were heavily distorted, only for comparison. In the on-site report, the forensics lead noted, no torn, burned, or force-indicated objects found. This indicated no struggle evidence. Also that workday, a ranger reported seeing Dunn's rescue Jeep parked near the tent area on the incident evening. Green added this to the summary, with note exact time unconfirmed. He requested verification via Dunn's shift log, but records only briefly stated, patrolled Western Beach area. No abnormalities. No one else confirmed his presence in that time frame. All evidence, sand samples, fabric threads, hair, tire casts, was sealed in preservation boxes, lid sealed per regulation, then loaded onto a specialized vehicle for transport to the State Forensics Lab in Tallahassee. Transport was documented clearly, with times, handover, and receiver names. While awaiting results, Green swept similar missing persons reports in the Gulf of Mexico over the past 12 months. But none matched the pattern. About 10 days later, the lab sent preliminary analysis. Sand samples contained no blood or human DNA traces. The hair near the sleeping bag had female genetic traits, but degraded from sun and salt, insufficient for family comparison. The 2 green fabric threads had no DNA, only identified as synthetic polyester common in travel sleeping bags. For tire casts, experts confirmed Goodyear Wrangler type for off-road vehicles, unable to specify exact vehicle. The lab's final conclusion stated, no biological traces or forensically valuable material detected. No evidence of criminal violence at scene. The report returned to Green with recommendation that in sunny, windy, strong tide conditions, trace preservation in open areas like Grayton Beach is very low. He reviewed results, signed the summary, and submitted to the sheriff's office. By then, all forensic data provided no new leads to determine disappearance cause or specific suspect. In an internal note, Green wrote briefly, no criminal basis. Case paused at administrative investigation level until additional evidence. After receiving the evidence analysis results from Tallahassee, Lieutenant Mason Green shifted the investigation focus to analyzing the victim's personal devices, including the cell phone Anna always carried. It was a Nokia 3390, a popular model from the early 2000s, using an AT&T SIM card. The device was found in the tent but powered off. The battery had been removed and placed in a small compartment of the backpack along with a travel charger. This caught Green's attention, as there was no clear reason for Anna to completely shut down the phone while camping, especially since she often used it as an alarm clock. The phone was sent to the Florida State Police Technical Division in Tallahassee to check connection logs and hardware status. Engineers analyzed data from the SIM, cell towers, and internal memory. After 2 days, they reported that the device's final signal was recorded shortly after midnight, while still in stable coverage of Grayton Beach Tower No. 2, less than a mile from the scene. After that point, the device stopped transmitting entirely, with no signs of signal loss or network drop. Technical experts ruled out hardware damage or connection errors, as AT&T system in the area recorded no outages that night. Battery data also showed about 70% charge at the last activity, meaning it couldn't have been due to a dead battery. System log indicators showed the phone was powered off through the normal process, not abruptly from impact or water exposure. This was evidenced by the manual power-off status code stored in memory. Green carefully reviewed the report, noting this detail was significant because it indicated the device was actively shut down, meaning someone, Anna or another person, held the phone and turned it off. If Anna did it, there needed to be an explanation for why she removed the battery and stored it in the backpack. If someone else did, it meant she no longer had control of the device at that time. Police continued analyzing call and message history for the 2 days before the disappearance. Everything was normal. A few calls with friends, one message to her mother about plans to return home after camping, no suspicious contacts. The carrier confirmed no unknown numbers called or attempted connection after midnight. State technical software also retrieved cell tower location logs showing the signal stopped in an area about 0.8 miles west of the campsite, near the patrol route often used by beach rescue vehicles. However, with the technology of the time, location error could be several hundred meters, so Green only noted it as a reference. In the internal meeting the next morning, he presented the analysis results to the investigators: no technical damage, not out of battery. Device manually powered off. This conclusion made the natural accident hypothesis, such as being swept away by waves, less convincing. A person falling into water or facing a sudden emergency wouldn't calmly remove the battery and neatly store the phone. Green began considering the possibility of a second person's intervention. To strengthen this, he requested the technical team try further analysis of the battery removal timing, but the device was too old to pinpoint exactly. Still, the final report confirmed shutdown occurred around before 1 a.m. In the statement submitted to the Walton County Sheriff, Green wrote, "No technical factors or natural incidents caused loss of contact. Device powered off via active operation." This behavior is inconsistent with normal response in emergency situations. He requested opening a new investigative direction, focusing on the possibility Anna encountered someone else on the beach or was lured away from the tent area. Based on the data that the phone signal stopped abruptly and never resumed, Green proposed officially adding the abduction or intervention by another person hypothesis to the investigation report. From that point, the case was no longer viewed solely as voluntary disappearance or accident. A case with criminal elements was placed on the table, though still without specific evidence to prove it. The phone data analysis led Lieutenant Mason Green to believe there was a human element in the disappearance, but to prove it, he needed to screen everyone present at Grayton Beach that night. The suspect screening phase began immediately after the technical report was completed. The initial list included Anna's friends, nearby campers, and all rangers and rescue personnel on duty from the night of June 15th into the morning of June 16th. The goal was to determine if anyone left the area at an unusual time or appeared near the victim's tent. Jim Alt, the first to report, was asked to return to the Walton County headquarters for formal questioning. He was re-asked about timing, location, and his actions throughout the night. Green was particularly interested in the period between midnight and early morning when Anna was last seen and when Jim discovered her missing. His statement nearly matched the previous record. They talked, then slept. He woke in the dark, didn't see her, and went searching. No signs of contradiction or deliberate concealment. However, per procedure, Green still requested a polygraph test. The examination was conducted by an independent Florida state specialist. Results were recorded as inconclusive, meaning it couldn't determine if Jim was truthful or lying. Still, parameters showed no excessive stress response when answering whether he harmed Anna or not. Green assessed that Jim showed no criminal suspect traits but couldn't be fully ruled out. He was allowed to leave headquarters but had to remain available for summons. Meanwhile, the camping area investigation team continued interviewing other witnesses. They visited each registered camping group from that weekend at the park. Most confirmed seeing the student group gathered around the fire, hearing music and laughter late into the night. A middle-aged couple tenting about 200 meters away said they saw vehicle headlights moving slowly along the sand around midnight, but not close enough to identify. When asked, they thought it might be a ranger or beach rescue patrol vehicle, common for campers here. Police noted this detail as it matched the tire type found at the scene. Green immediately contacted the County Beach Rescue Unit to check that night's patrol schedule. Shift reports showed Deputy Harold Dunn was responsible for the Grayton Beach area. He was called to the county office the next day for questioning. In the statement, Dunn confirmed driving through the park area on the incident evening. He explained it was routine to ensure visitor safety and check beach conditions. When Green asked about departure and return times from the station, Dunn said he left around 10 p.m. and returned near dawn, not remembering exactly. He also said upon hearing the disappearance at noon, he returned to assist the search per superior orders. This matched internal log notes. Patrol West Sector, no incident. However, Green still found it unusual that the report lacked an end-of-duty time, mandatory for every patrol. When asked why it was blank, Dunn said due to oversight in logging. He had long tenure, multiple commendations for coastal rescue, so no one in command questioned him. All shift file information was valid, with no direct evidence contradicting his statement. For caution, Green requested the vehicle unit verify the rescue jeep's route that night. 2001 positioning data was rudimentary, only recording total mileage without specific timestamps, making verification nearly impossible. All they had was that Dunn's beach rescue jeep left and returned the same night. No one knew exactly where he went during that time. Though doubts existed about gaps in the statement, Green had to follow legal procedure. He compiled all statements, polygraph results, and witness interviews into a unified file. In the summary to superiors, he wrote, "No criminal act determined, all involved individuals cooperative. No physical evidence or contradictory statements sufficient for charges. Continue monitoring and screening with additional data." In the conclusion, Green added a brief line reflecting the situation. Anna Nantais' missing person file, temporarily no specific criminal basis. 3 months after Anna Nantais disappeared, the investigation was essentially at a standstill. All directions had been exhausted. Every potential witness interviewed, and collected evidence yielded no valuable forensic results. Lieutenant Mason Green, case lead, sent the third periodic report to the Walton County Sheriff's Office with the familiar opening. No additional evidence or new witnesses discovered. In reality, the team had done everything within their capabilities at the time. They had expanded searches to Gulfside residential areas, checking docks, marinas, and small lakes connected to the Point Washington marshes. Every effort yielded the same result: No physical traces, no direct witnesses, no criminal evidence. Anna's file gained a few more pages of subordinate officers' statements, but no content changes. Green still tried to maintain a certain level of attention, but the truth was unit resources were dwindling. Other incidents at the time, from property theft to serious traffic accidents, required forced dispersion. To superiors, this disappearance, though regrettable, lacked clear crime elements, so it was gradually treated as a cause unknown case. Administratively, that was how to close a file with no exit. By late September 2001, Green received directives from the sheriff's office to finalize all documents and change the file's status to inactive, missing, cause unknown. This didn't mean the case was deleted, but no active investigation would continue. In the final summary report, Green detailed the entire process. File opened June 16, 2001. Investigative measures: marine search, shoreline forest checks, evidence collection, forensic analysis, witness interviews. Results undetermined. The document set was bound in a blue cover, nearly 200 pages, sealed with a red stamp, and stored in Walton County's archives. Evidence items, fabric threads, sand samples, hair, tire casts, were moved to storage lockers, each bag individually sealed, placed in slot 14 of the basement evidence room. Per regulation, such missing person files are only reopened with new evidence or body discovery. After completing procedures, Green wrote an internal note to himself. Criminal element not ruled out, but insufficient basis. Possible re-examination with advancing forensic technology. That was the final line in the original file. After classification, news about Anna gradually vanished from local media. Her family returned to Gainesville, still contacting police periodically, but their calls grew rarer. Jim Alt returned to school, continuing life in silence, though still labeled the last person to see the victim. In 2002, a student group created a website seeking information on the disappearance, but after a few months, it shut down due to no responses. To Grayton Beach residents, the story of the girl vanishing in the night became just a passing topic in roadside cafe conversations. Officers from the initial search were gradually reassigned. Harold Dunn continued as Deputy Beach Rescue for nearly 10 more years, still handling Grayton Beach, retiring in 2010. In the county's internal newsletter, he was noted as veteran officer with many contributions to coastal security. No one mentioned his vehicle once appearing near the disappearance site. Mason Green was transferred to administrative investigations, handling small-scale thefts. Annually, per regulation, he still signed confirmation that the Anna Nantais file remained in no progress status. Occasionally, he visited the evidence storage for routine checks, retaping faded seals, then left the dark, damp room without looking back. By 2005, a new electronic storage system was implemented, but pre-existing old files weren't fully digitized. Anna's file, along with hundreds of other unsolved disappearances, remained on wooden shelves in the Walton County Sheriff's basement headquarters, thick with dust. Over time, the case faded from the memories of those involved. In the last updated archive catalog from 2009, Anna Nantais' name was just a small line. Case WCSO 01174, missing cause unknown, no further activity. The case, in practice, was buried with other files, awaiting someone to accidentally reopen the yellowed pages someday. 20 years passed since the file coded WCSO 01174A was closed and moved to the Walton County Sheriff's Office archives. During that time, no one mentioned Anna Nantais' name except her family, who still sent Christmas cards to the department's administrative office as a reminder they were waiting. In early 2021, the Florida Department of Justice launched the Florida Cold Case Review Project, a collaboration between local police departments and the State Forensics Lab to re-examine unsolved disappearances and murders. Funded by federal grants, it focused on applying next-generation DNA analysis to old samples. When the backlog list was compiled, Anna Nantais' disappearance was quickly prioritized because all evidence remained relatively intact in storage. In the first assignment wave, Detective Melissa Grant, who had over 15 years of experience in cold case investigations in Tallahassee, was assigned to the case. Grant was known for her meticulous habits and industry reputation for rereading hundreds of old report pages to find overlooked details. Upon receiving the file, she was given a large cardboard box containing over 200 pages of documents and sealed 2001 evidence bags, still bearing faded red stamps. On the label, scrawled in blue ink, "Evidence. Anna Nantais, Grayton Beach." In the first few days, Grant did not immediately open the evidence. She spent time reading the entire investigation report, from Lieutenant Mason Green's initial statement to the forensic conclusions in Tallahassee. The documents were written in an old manual and unsystematic way, but the more she read, the more she noticed some unusual details. In the patrol report section for the night of June 15, 2001, the Line Beach Rescue Vehicle, Harold Dunn, patrolling Western Beach area, nothing detected, was written in a different colored pen, seemingly added later. The recording time also did not match the timestamp in the duty log, where Dunn's shift ended at 22 o'clock, while the scene report noted rescue vehicle tire marks present on the beach much later. Grant requested the Archives Department retrieve the original duty log book. The old document, yellowed and frayed at the edges, but still clearly showed Dunn's return time column, was left blank, later filled in with different handwriting. She noted this contradiction and cross-referenced it with the scene sketch signed by Green. In the preliminary scene map, the tire mark location was determined to be about 30 meters from the tent area, heading toward the Coastal Patrol Road. Per regulations at the time, only beach rescue vehicles were authorized to move that close to the shore at night. The coincidence of tire type, location, and duty schedule made it impossible for Grant to overlook. She created a timeline comparison table. 22 o'clock, Dunn leaves the station. Around 23 o'clock, the student group still sitting around the campfire. Around 0 o'clock, Anna disappears. The gaps between timestamps were not large, but enough to raise questions about whether Dunn was in the area before the disappearance was discovered. Grant knew every hypothesis had to be based on concrete evidence, so instead of rushing to conclusions, she focused on the physical evidence. According to the 2001 file, all sand samples, fabric fibers, hair, and tire casts had been sent for analysis, but at the time, DNA technology was primitive and the samples were deemed insufficient for analysis. With current technology, those once useless samples could yield surprising results. She contacted the Florida State Forensic Laboratory in Orlando, equipped with next-generation touch DNA analysis systems, to confirm re-examination feasibility. The lab agreed, provided the evidence remained in original sealed condition without cross-contamination during storage. On March 12, 2021, Grant, along with a technician, inspected the evidence seals in the basement storage at Walton County headquarters. The red seals had faded ink, but the stamps were intact, showing no signs of tampering. Inside the preservation bags, the green fabric fibers and sand samples were kept in glass vials, while the tire cast was wrapped in moisture-proof plastic. She drafted a new inventory report, photographed each item, signed, and applied additional inspection seals. The dusty, musty smell in the sealed room made Grant realize she was touching a forgotten piece of the past, evidence that had lain dormant for 2 decades. That same evening, in her report to the Cold Case Review Program leadership, Grant wrote, "Anna Nantais disappearance, 2001, classified missing, cause unknown. File contains samples viable for next-generation DNA verification. Request full re-examination of all evidence at Orlando Laboratory." Additionally, discrepancy discovered between Deputy Harold Dunn's duty report and tire mark appearance time at scene. The report was approved the next day. This decision marked the first time in 20 years that file WCSO-01174A was officially reopened. As she stepped out of storage, Grant looked through the window westward, where sunset light draped over Grayton Beach's white sands. She knew the investigative road was long, but a single small timing discrepancy, a fabric fiber, a lingering fingerprint, could change the entire conclusion of this seemingly forgotten case. 3 weeks after the request was approved, all evidence from Anna Nantais' disappearance was transported by specialized vehicle to the Florida State Forensic Laboratory in Orlando. Accompanying it was Detective Melissa Grant, responsible for overseeing the unsealing and sample handover process. The examination was conducted under the direction of Dr. Carol Perez, head of DNA analysis for the Cold Case Division. Technicians opened each sealed bag in an ISO standard clean room, with every action recorded on video to ensure integrity. The first sample tested was the green fabric fiber found on the edge of Anna's sleeping bag in 2001. Under an electron microscope, the fiber retained its polyester structure, but its surface had adhered dust particles and sea salt crystals. Using touch DNA analysis, the experts applied a special enzyme solution to extract remaining epithelial cells. After 72 hours of processing, they obtained a DNA sequence long enough for next-generation PCR amplification. Initial results showed evidence of 2 different DNA sources, one female, one male. The female sample had a high match rate with Anna's mother's genetic data, used as reference, confirming it belonged to the victim. The male sample was a completely new discovery. To verify accuracy, Dr. Perez ordered the process repeated at triple sensitivity, using the remaining 2 fiber portions and a small piece from the sleeping bag. The second run produced the same result, a clear male DNA sequence of individual identifiable quality. Characteristic gene segments were coded per CODIS standards and entered into the National Comparison System. Within 24 hours, the software returned. The sample did not match any registered offenders in the database, but showed partial similarity to family DNA profiles of personnel who worked for Florida State Police between 1990-2010. Specifically, one gene sequence matched 50% with the Dunn family profile. Grant received this notification late in the afternoon. She requested the lab re-verify to rule out error. Dr. Perez agreed and reanalyzed a third sample, this time separating outer and inner fiber surfaces. The inner surface was completely clean, but the outer still retained the mixed DNA, female from the victim and unidentified male. When further comparing genetic markers, the match rate rose to 63%, sufficient to establish close familial relation. The forensic report concluded, male DNA sample found on evidence likely belongs to an individual sharing genetic lineage with the Dunn family, not matching Jim Alt or any other person tested in the case file. This result shocked the team as it opened a new investigative direction tied to someone once considered an official witness. Before the report was sent to Walton County, Grant requested a second independent test for accuracy. The lab agreed to transfer a sample portion to an affiliated center in Tampa for cross-checking. 5 days later, the official confirmation was issued, results match. No cross-contamination. Male DNA sample is authentic. Upon receiving the result copy, Grant re-examined all old documents on Harold Dunn. In administrative records, he retired in 2010 and currently resided in Fort Walton Beach, less than 40 miles from the disappearance site. She noted Dunn had overseen the Grayton Beach area for over 10 years, had after-hours beach access, and was reported present the night of the disappearance. The DNA showing partial genetic match with the Dunn family made every old file detail worth re-evaluating. Grant cautiously did not publicize the discovery immediately. She created a confidential internal investigation file named Case Review 01A Dunn. In it, she documented the full chain of events, patrol timing discrepancies, matching tire type, report additions in different ink, and now the DNA result. To ensure procedure, she contacted the Florida Attorney General's office for guidance on investigating former law enforcement personnel. The office replied that public information collection was permissible, but summoning or interrogation required direct evidence. In the following weeks, Grant rechecked storage room custody records. A 2003 report noted that during periodic inventory, the person signing for Anna Nantais' case evidence was Harold Dunn, then Deputy Rescue Commander, temporarily assigned temporary storage management. This note further reinforced suspicion of his direct contact with the samples. She carefully photocopied all documents, marked in red pen, and filed in the confidential dossier. At the end of April 2021, the complete Orlando lab report was officially transferred to the Walton County Sheriff's Office. The 12-page document, signed by Dr. Perez, affirmed standard compliant procedures, reliable results, and no technical errors. In the conclusion, a bolded line, "Unidentified male DNA discovered, partial match with Dunn family. Recommend continued investigation into identity and evidence contact scope." Grant read every page carefully, then set the file down. The cold lines of scientific reporting had confirmed what she sensed upon reopening the case. This disappearance was not merely an accident or voluntary departure. Someone had been present that night, leaving a trace so small it took 20 years to detect. She closed the file cover and signed an internal memo. DNA analysis complete. Sample partial match with Dunn family. Initiate confidential supplemental investigation into subject Harold Dunn, former Deputy Beach Rescue, retired 2010. As she left the office, Grant carried a copy of the results and paused before the Walton County Retired Officers Honor Board. Among hundreds of brass-engraved names, her eyes stopped on one line, Harold J. Dunn, 25 years of service. A man once seen as a model public servant now reappeared in the file, not as a witness, but as a genetic trace lingering in the cold sands of Grayton Beach 20 years ago. After the DNA analysis was confirmed and the confidential file, Case Review 01A, Dunn was established. Detective Melissa Grant knew that to turn hypothesis into evidence, she needed a more objective fact, one that could precisely confirm Harold Dunn's presence at Grayton Beach the night of the disappearance. The DNA only proved he had touched the evidence, but not when. To go further, she had to prove he was at the scene before the incident was reported. Grant began contacting the Florida State Police IT department, which stored internal radio recordings from the early 2000s. Most old recordings had been digitized for research, though many were damaged or overwritten. She submitted a request to recover data related to Walton County Beach Rescue Team frequencies from June 14 to 17, 2001. Retrieval took nearly a month due to the massive archive and manual conversion of old formats. In early June 2021, the technical department sent Grant a 4-hour audio data set recording exchanges between patrol units on the night of June 15 into the morning of June 16, 2001. Audio quality was noisy and fragmented, but after cleaning, specialists heard a signal with call sign Unit B27 matching Deputy Harold Dunn's vehicle code. In the recording, a middle-aged male voice reported to dispatch at 2342 B27 at Western Shore area, sees student group camp lights, no issues. Another voice replied briefly, confirmed, continue patrol. Then, around 1:17 a.m., the same call sign reappeared, B27 at previous position, taking break. Radio standby. The signal ended there, with no departure or return to station report. Grant reread the original duty log and compared. In the initial report, Dunn recorded leaving the station at 22 o'clock and returning around 4 a.m. with no note of extended stop at Grayton Beach. This directly contradicted the newly recovered radio data. She immediately sent the audio sample to the State Forensic Audio Analysis Center for authentication. After running voice recognition software, the center confirmed 95% probability the voice belonged to Harold Dunn based on a comparison sample from 1999 beach rescue training records. The accompanying report concluded, voice in recording belongs to the same individual recorded prior to missing person report. At the same time, Grant requested the data department retrieve 2001 vehicle positioning logs. Though GPS on police vehicles was rudimentary then, the beach rescue team's routing system still recorded mileage and basic coordinates for fuel management. Old hard drives were stored in the Tallahassee Technical Archive. After nearly 2 weeks of recovery, engineers extracted a portion of the log for vehicle B-27. The data showed the vehicle left the station at 2211, traveled southwest along Route 30A, stopped at coordinates matching Grayton Beach State Park boundary around 2330, and did not leave until at least 2:00 a.m., over 2 hours before the disappearance was reported. When cross-referenced with the area map, the stop location was the sand road leading to the student camping area. All this data convinced Grant that Dunn was at the scene during a critical window before any official reason to be there. The radio and GPS data, though old, were objective evidence, unalterable. She added the reports to the confidential file and presented them in a meeting with direct superiors at the Walton County Sheriff's Office. When Grant played the recording B-27 at previous position, taking break, radio standby, the room fell silent. It was proof Dunn had stopped the vehicle, possibly exited, and remained in the beach area for at least 2 continuous hours the night Anna vanished. To ensure legal procedure, Grant forwarded all audio and GPS data to the state prosecutor's office for independent verification. The response report confirmed the data's authenticity, with no signs of editing or fabrication. In the concluding statement, the prosecutor clearly noted, radio and GPS data prove Mr. Harold Dunn's presence at the scene prior to the disappearance. No legitimate official reason recorded. Combined with the partial DNA match and patrol report discrepancies, Grant saw she had sufficient grounds for the next step. That afternoon, in her office, she prepared a 6-page request for a search warrant at Harold Dunn's residence. The document clearly listed legal bases, DNA analysis results, radio data, GPS data, and duty log inconsistencies. The final section of the request stated, "Objective collect evidence, documents or data related to the disappearance of Anna Nantais at Grayton Beach State Park, June 2001. Upon signing, Grant knew that for the first time in 20 years, the chain of evidence was tight enough to request judicial approval for a home search, the starting point for a true criminal investigation phase around the name Harold Dunn, once viewed as a dedicated witness in a case thought long dormant. In early January 2023, nearly 2 years after the case was reopened, Detective Melissa Grant received judicial approval for the search warrant at Harold Dunn's home from Walton County Court. The warrant was effective immediately and allowed investigators to seize any evidence, documents, or devices related to Anna Nantais' 2001 disappearance. That same day, a 6-officer task force was dispatched to Fort Walton Beach, where Dunn lived with his wife in a single-story home in a quiet Gulfside residential area. The small beige-painted house had 2 old oaks in front, with a wooden sign on the porch reading "Retired Deputy." Neighbors described him as reclusive, rarely interacting, only occasionally mowing the lawn or grocery shopping. At 8 a.m., the police convoy stopped in front of the house. When Dunn opened the door, he appeared calm, asked no questions about the reason, and only requested to read the search warrant. Grant explained the authority and purpose clearly, then signaled the technicians to begin. They divided the house into 3 zones: living room and kitchen, personal office, and garage with old items. Each team was tasked with filming, sealing, and cataloging everything seized. From the first minutes, Grant focused on the office at the end of the hallway, walls covered with Dunn's beach rescue commendations and certificates. On the desk, besides ordinary items, was an old brown leather notebook, next to a vintage Polaroid camera and several undeveloped film rolls. She ordered technicians to photograph everything before sealing. Opening the notebook, the first page noted 2001. Amid miscellaneous duty and weather notes was a short entry in bold handwriting, dated June 17th. "That girl wouldn't listen. I told her to go back to camp." The line stunned Grant. She said nothing, quietly closed the notebook, and assigned an evidence number. In the drawer below, Technicians found an old green sleeping bag, slightly torn at the head, zipper discolored from salt and sand. The fabric completely matched the type recorded in the 2001 scene report. Grant directed the forensics team to sample the fabric, seal it separately for later comparison. In the garage, the team discovered a plastic bin with many old items, including a stack of yellowed Polaroid photos. Some showed Grayton Beach scenes, others young student groups around a campfire. On the edge of one blurry photo, a girl matching Anna Nantais' description faced the sea. Dunn appeared in the frame, standing farther back in his rescue uniform. Police immediately seized the entire photo stack, camera, and remaining film rolls. The living room and kitchen yielded nothing notable, but the garage also had camping gear, rope, flashlights, and an old plastic canister. All were documented, photographed, and sealed. The search lasted nearly 5 hours. Upon completion of inventory, Grant read the seizure report and required Dunn to sign acknowledgement. He reviewed each page in silence, signed at the end, and asked briefly, "What do you think you'll find here?" Grant did not answer directly, only stating everything would be analyzed per procedure. She informed Dunn he needed to accompany them to Walton County headquarters for questioning that day, under detention provisions. He did not object, gathered a few personal items, and went with police, face composed but eyes avoiding contact. While Dunn was transported, Grant returned to the office for a final check. She noticed a small wooden sliding lid box on the bookshelf, containing rescue medals and an old stamp with Grayton Beach State Park image. Though not directly related, she requested photos for the catalog, as the stamp icon matched the engraving on Dunn's 2001 uniform badge. All evidence was loaded onto the vehicle, sealed under 2 neighbors' witness. That afternoon at Walton County headquarters, the investigation team held an emergency meeting to compile results. The preliminary report stated, during search of Mr. Dunn's residence, evidence directly linked to 2001 Anna Nantais disappearance discovered, including green sleeping bag matching old sample, Polaroid camera with photos of student group and victim, and notebook with entry referencing incident post-disappearance. Based on these, the case file was upgraded from cold case review to high probability criminal involvement. Grant submitted all seized evidence to the Orlando Forensics Lab for DNA cross-matching and fiber checks, while requesting undeveloped film be stored in cold storage to preserve images. In her memo to the state prosecutor's office, she summarized, seized evidence has direct investigative value. Notebook entry and recovered images reinforce suspicion of Harold Dunn's presence at disappearance scene. Recommend maintaining subject detention for interrogation. That night, leaving the office, Grant looked through the glass at the light reflecting on the sealed bag with the old notebook. She knew the scrawled lines inside could be the key to unlocking truth buried for over 2 decades. On the State Investigation System's electronic update, case WCSO-01174A status officially changed, active. High probability criminal case. Harold Dunn's interrogation was conducted the next morning in the Walton County Sheriff's Office investigation room. He was fully informed of legal rights, with a family-appointed attorney present. The sealed room was tense, only the sound of note-taking pens and soft recorder hum. Detective Melissa Grant sat opposite, starting with basic questions about his career, post-retirement routine, and connection to Grayton Beach. Dunn spoke slowly, evenly, saying he had left the force long ago, keeping only a few old items as mementos of his service years. When Grant mentioned the sleeping bag and Polaroid camera seized from his home, he admitted they were his but insisted only used in rescue training. He explained the green sleeping bag was standard 2001 beach rescue issue, given to many, and matching the victims was completely coincidental. Regarding the photos, Dunn said he often photographed visitors and students for training materials for recruits, no personal intent. The Polaroids, he claimed, were taken early that summer, exact date forgotten, and Anna's appearance was coincident. The notebook, he said, was daily work notes. The line "that girl wouldn't listen," just a reminder about a swimming safety violation he handled. Grant listened without interrupting, only asking him to confirm everything in writing. Shifting to forensic evidence, Grant presented DNA results, noting the 2001 fiber sample partially matched the Dunn family and no one else in the file. Dunn looked down at the table, no reaction. His attorney immediately objected, calling it vague statistical results, insufficient for charges. Grant remained calm, stating the lab confirmed over 60% match, indicating close blood relation. She did not demand confession, only asked Dunn to explain why his DNA might appear on evidence collected 20 years earlier at a scene he oversaw. Dunn did not answer, only shrugged and said, "I was on duty there, might have touched something before they collected samples." Grant noted the exact response verbatim, then moved on. She pulled from the file copies of B-27 rescue vehicle GPS data and the June 15, 2001 radio recording. She asked him to listen to the male voice, B-27, at previous position, taking break. After playback, Dunn frowned, saying the voice sounds like me, but insisted he did not recall being at Grayton Beach that late. He stuck to his old statement, left station at 10 p.m., returned around 4 a.m., just drove through the Western Beach area. When asked why the duty log lacked return time, he replied curtly, "Forgot to log." Grant requested comparison between GPS, showing his vehicle stopped over 2 hours near the camp, and his statement. At this, he stared at the table, silent, for nearly a minute. Finally, "Machines can be wrong. I had no reason to stop long there." His attorney interjected, requesting a private consultation break, but Grant continued per procedure, only asking clarifying questions. In the final part, she projected the scene map with timelines, matching tire marks, patrol report additions in different ink, positioning coincidences. "All data indicate you were at the scene before the report. Do you confirm?" Grant asked. Dunn looked at the map, voice low. "I did my job. If I was there, only for safety checks, nothing more." When Grant reiterated DNA and notebook entry, he replied briefly, "I don't remember. Too long ago." No anger or defense, just heavy silence over the room. The interrogation lasted over 4 hours. Finally, Grant ended by requiring Dunn to sign the statement. He read each line carefully, signed without comment. He was then returned to holding while the team continued screening areas he patrolled during his career. From internal files, they listed his frequent spots, beaches, checkpoints, Gulfside marshes. Grant ordered preliminary sweeps at each, searching for anomalies or buried objects. Though no formal charges yet, the Anna Nantais disappearance investigation had fully shifted to criminal level. System notes updated, subject Harold Dunn. Status, primary person of interest. Grant knew the investigation had entered a new phase where every small detail, from patrol logs to positioning data, could become the deciding piece in the final picture of Grayton Beach night in 2001. 2 days after the initial interrogation, Harold Dunn remained detained at Walton County headquarters under extended investigation order. Throughout, he stayed quiet, spoke little, requested nothing beyond morning coffee. His attorney repeatedly filed conditional release petitions, citing health and age, but Detective Melissa Grant opposed, arguing detention necessary pending seized evidence analysis. On the third morning, Dunn agreed to meet Grant again to clarify a few points in prior statements. The meeting was recorded with attorney observing. He began in a low, hoarse voice, "I remember talking to that girl, but I didn't harm her." Grant did not interrupt, only asked for details. Dunn said that night on patrol, he saw the student group with fire and alcohol, stopped to check for forest fire risk or park violations. Approaching, he saw a young girl sitting apart, facing the sea. He spoke a few words, reminded them of safety, then left. She talked normally, seemed happy. "I left right after," he said, eyes not meeting hers. Grant asked why the radio log said B-27 at previous position, taking break for over 2 hours. Dunn replied, he stopped en route to write reports and rest, not wanting to drive tired. When Grant noted GPS proving his vehicle at the same spot until 2 a.m., Dunn said he only remembered dozing in the vehicle, didn't step out again. This mismatched the radio log and duty record. She continued asking about the notebook line. That girl wouldn't listen. Dunn looked down, then said, "Might have been about someone else. Each season I dealt with dozens of reckless visitors. I don't remember." The session dragged on, Grant not pressing, sequentially presenting evidence. Polaroids, DNA sample, positioning data, at the photo with Dunn's shadow behind the students. He glanced, then turned away. Voice even, "I might have taken it, but don't know anyone's names." Grant repeated the initial question. "If you only stop to talk, why no duty report entry? Why times don't match?" Dunn did not answer, only said, "I don't recall everything from 20 years ago." While the interrogation proceeded, in the adjacent room, forensics completed a supplemental report on seized evidence. On the old green sleeping bag from the garage, they found mixed DNA traces matching Anna Nantais' type. Results were sent directly to Grant that afternoon. When she returned to the room and announced this, Dunn sat still. No emotion. His attorney requested ending the session, arguing insufficient basis, linking evidence to the old case. But Grant understood the gap between insufficient evidence and sufficient for indictment was now razor thin. That evening, she held an emergency meeting with the Florida State Prosecutor and Walton County Sheriff. All evidence was represented: partial Dunn family DNA on old fiber, victim DNA on sleeping bag from suspect's home, GPS and radio proving Dunn at scene pre-report, plus altered log details and contradictory statements. Based on these, the prosecutor agreed to sign preliminary indictment of Harold Dunn on 2 counts: kidnapping and evidence tampering concealment. The next morning, upon being informed of the decision, Dunn only nodded, showing no resistance. He was read his rights clearly and transferred to the county investigative detention area. In the internal bulletin, the case status was updated to case upgraded, criminal proceedings initiated. Grant looked at the line appearing on the screen, feeling both relieved and burdened. 22 years had passed. An unsolved disappearance was now officially entering the criminal phase. But she also understood that Dunn's words, "I talked to that girl, but I didn't harm her," might only be the tip of a deeper truth, one the new evidence was just beginning to touch. 3 days after the preliminary indictment, Harold Dunn began changing his attitude. In Walton County's detention facility, he became quieter, no longer defensive when meeting investigators. The DNA cross-matching and victim traces on the sleeping bag seized from his home had shaken the rational defenses he had clung to for 2 decades. Detective Melissa Grant, directly monitoring progress, knew the moment for the subject to start telling the truth had arrived. On the 4th morning, Dunn proactively requested to meet her without his attorney. He only said briefly to the jail staff, "I want to tell everything." The session took place in the county headquarters recorded room, witnessed by a prosecutor representative and 2 forensics personnel. Dunn sat straight, face gaunt, eyes red from lack of sleep. He did not wait for Grant to ask, but began in a hoarse, slow voice. "I did talk to her, and yes, I did put her in the vehicle." The room fell completely silent. He recounted that night, while patrolling the camping area, he saw the student group still awake, playing music and drinking beer. He stopped to remind them, saw Anna sitting alone near the water's edge, and approached to talk. She wasn't scared, just smiled and told me not to worry. "I told her to go back to camp, but she stayed there," he said. According to Dunn, he talked a few more minutes, then suggested she get in the vehicle so he could drive her to the tent area as the wind was picking up. Anna hesitated, but eventually agreed. As the vehicle moved, Dunn said she started becoming uneasy, asking why he was going the opposite direction. "I only intended to loop to the ranger station," but she panicked. She opened the door. I tried to hold her back, then her head hit the door frame. Dunn said, hands clenched, voice choking. He insisted it was an accident, no intentional attack. She collapsed. I checked her pulse, but felt nothing. I didn't know what to do. He said, He drove away from the camping area along a trail toward the Point Washington marshes, a remote spot. I stopped there, thinking if I reported it, my career would end. I panicked, he said. In his statement, Dunn described using a shovel to dig a shallow hole near the water's edge, placing the body in, then covering with sand and leaves. I went back to the vehicle, sat there until morning, then returned to the station like nothing happened. Grant sat opposite, not interrupting. When Dunn paused, she only asked, "Can you precisely identify that location?" Dunn nodded, saying he remembered the area near the southern boundary of Point Washington Forest with an old wooden sign Trail 7A. He also recalled a broken pine lying across the trail, about 20 meters from the burial spot. The statement was recorded and fully documented, with Dunn's confirming signature. He did not request to change anything, only whispered, "I didn't think she was dead. I just wanted her to calm down." When she stopped breathing, I panicked. "I'm sorry." Immediately after the statement, Grant reported directly to the Florida State Prosecutor's Office. Based on the confession, she immediately requested a search and recovery warrant for the marsh area Dunn indicated. The warrant was signed that afternoon, requiring coordination between Walton County Police, State Forensics, and Point Washington Forest Rangers. In the court request, Grant stated, Subject Harold Dunn confessed to placing victim Anna Nantais in his vehicle on the 2001 disappearance night, causing fatal injury, then burying the body in the Point Washington Forest marsh area. Request permission to search and recover remains to verify statement. That evening, units began preparing equipment and vehicles, metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, thermal camera drones, and professional divers. The entire forest was cordoned in a 1-mile radius around coordinates Dunn redrew on the map. It was wet, dense terrain, rarely visited, where water and mud blended into a thick, hard-to-navigate layer. Grant knew this search would be a major challenge, but also the only chance to verify the entire story. Leaving the interrogation room, she looked through the glass at Dunn sitting alone and holding, hands clasped, head bowed. Gone was the initial defiance or challenge, leaving only the figure of an exhausted old man, as if the 20-year burden had just been lifted by a confession. However, for Grant, his words still needed field proof. She signed the final daily report, voluntary statement, admitting placing victim in vehicle and indicating burial site. Sufficient basis for emergency search at Point Washington Forest. On the morning of January 17, 2023, the search at Point Washington Forest Marsh officially began. Florida State Forensics, Walton County Rescue, and Forest Rangers participated, over 40 people total. The Dunn-indicated area was marked on the map, about half a mile south of Trail 7A, near a small lake, often flooded in rainy season. At the scene, weather was dry, but ground still muddy from prior rain. Grant was on site, overseeing the entire process, standing beside forensics coordinators. Specialized equipment was deployed from morning, ground-penetrating radar, thermal sensors, and infrared camera drones to scan the area. By noon, as temperature rose, one drone detected an anomaly on screen, a 2-square-meter depression with soil structure differing from surroundings. Technicians marked coordinates and moved in. Under dry leaves and roots, soil was darker, mud compressed, as if under heavy pressure. Forensics used metal probes, and within minutes, a probe hit something solid. Work proceeded slowly, layers removed with small trowels. About 30 minutes later, a red fabric piece emerged, frayed and mud-caked. Right below, small bone fragments appeared, ivory white mixed with dark brown. The entire area was immediately sealed, cameras recording continuously, and scene examiners dispatched. Excavation lasted all afternoon. When mud was fully cleared, experts discovered the remaining human skeleton lying on its side, curled posture, with a red fabric jacket nearly rotted through the torso. Near the neck bones was a small silver necklace with star pendant, perfectly matching the description in Anna Nantais' 2001 personal items file. Nearby were white plastic fragments, possibly from a sleeping bag zipper. Forensics carefully collected each bone piece into numbered specialized containers. All samples, including surrounding soil, fabric pieces, and necklace, were sealed on site under Grant and state prosecutors' witness. As sunset draped the forest, specialized vehicles left the scene carrying evidence to Orlando lab. Grant stayed until work ended, then departed. In the preliminary report, forensics lead noted, adult female skeletal remains discovered, shallow burial, with personal evidence including red jacket and silver necklace. High probability victim of 2001 disappearance. News was quickly reported to Walton County Sheriff's Office, where on-duty officers watched via video feed. The room fell dead silent when the silver necklace image appeared on screen, the item described in Jim Alt's statement 22 years earlier. 2 days later, Orlando Forensics released DNA test results. Bone samples from the scene were compared to Anna's mother's 2001 genetic reference. Results matched 100%. Report concluded, victim identity confirmed as Anna Marie Nantais, born 1982, disappeared June 2001 at Grayton Beach State Park. Grant received results early morning and immediately forwarded to Florida State Prosecutor's Office. In the update report, she noted, excavated evidence confirms subject Harold Dunn's statement on burial location accurate. Victim death due to head trauma, consistent with subject's description. That afternoon, a special meeting was held at Walton County headquarters. Prosecutor, forensics, and investigation representatives agreed to reclassify the file from kidnapping and evidence tampering to homicide investigation, official murder case. At the meeting, Grant presented the investigation timeline from DNA on evidence, GPS verification, statement cross-checks to body recovery. Every link fit, no significant gaps in evidence chain. State prosecutor declared, "We have closed a disappearance and opened a substantiated homicide." In the report to Florida Department of Justice, the bolded conclusion, human remains positively identified as Anna Nantais. Case reclassified as homicide, bone samples, red jacket, and silver necklace were stored as primary trial evidence. As Grant left the meeting room, it was dark, sea wind carrying salt smell through the hallway. She paused, looking north, where Point Washington Forest sank into night. For 22 years, the question, "Where is Anna?" finally had an answer beneath the damp mud where forest and tides meet. But the found truth brought no relief, only opening a new phase where the disappearance had officially become murder, and the man once in police uniform now stood on the other side of justice. Immediately after DNA confirmation, Detective Melissa Grant began the most critical step, building the criminal indictment file against Harold Dunn. For the first time in over 20 years, Anna Nantais' disappearance officially entered prosecution phase with charges of second-degree murder and concealment of remains. File construction took nearly 3 weeks, under Florida State Prosecutor's Office and Walton County Sheriff's Legal Department oversight. Grant started by rescreening all evidence to ensure an airtight chain. She organized documents chronologically from the 2001 disappearance night to 2023 excavation, each piece with clear origin, collector, and verification report. The file's first section was DNA results, fiber and sleeping bag samples showing victim DNA and partial Dunn family genetic match, plus Anna's DNA on the sleeping bag seized from his home. Second section, 2001 GPS positioning and radio recordings, recovered and authenticated by State Technical Center, proving Dunn at Grayton Beach during the incident without official reason. Third, Dunn's direct statement admitting placing Anna in vehicle, causing fatal impact, then burying in Point Washington Forest, perfectly matching actual excavation site. Fourth, scene evidence, sleeping bag, red jacket, silver necklace, plus bone autopsy consistent with head impact injury. Final section, old administrative documents including altered duty logs, later added report in different ink, and shift reports missing end times, all reinforcing post-crime concealment. In the summary to the prosecutor, Grant wrote, Harold Dunn, former Walton County Beach Rescue Deputy, was present at Anna Nantais' disappearance scene, night of June 15, 2001. He admitted placing victim in vehicle and causing injury, leading to death. Subject then actively buried remains, altered patrol records, and remained silent for over 2 decades. Conduct meets elements of second-degree murder and concealment of remains under Florida Criminal Code. In following days, Grant worked with state prosecutors to standardize the file. Every minor detail was rechecked. Scene photos, analysis reports, witness signatures, radio exchange timestamps. Lead prosecutor, Elaine Rodriguez, veteran of many cold cases, assessed, "This is one of the tightest evidence chains in cold case history." Forensics added technical report on injury correlation. Skull structure showed fracture consistent with strong metal frame impact, supporting Dunn's head-hit door claim. However, experts concluded with such injury, victim could have survived with medical aid, proving Dunn chose silence over help. Satisfying depraved indifference, causing death legal element. By mid-March 2023, the complete file was transferred to State Prosecutor's Office for final legal review. After 3 independent screenings, Florida State Prosecutor's Office issued official indictment approval for Harold Dunn on 2 counts: second-degree murder and concealment, improper handling of remains. Notice was signed April 2, 2023, by lead prosecutor Elaine Rodriguez. Copies were sent same day to Walton County Sheriff's Office and State Justice Department. Immediately after indictment issuance, Grant convened an internal meeting at headquarters. She stood before the investigation team, voice calm but firm. As of today, Anna Nantais' disappearance is no longer a mystery. It is a criminal case, with specific defendant and specific evidence. Outside, media began brief reports on 2001 disappearance reopening, but details kept sealed until court set trial date. Dunn, held at Okaloosa County Jail, status changed from investigative detention to criminal indictment defendant, awaiting preliminary hearing. In the final compilation to State Justice Department, Grant wrote a concise conclusion, like closing a 20-plus-year case journey. Physical, technical, and self-admitted evidence fully consistent, proving causative death and remains concealment. Indictment file complete, approved April 2023. Leaving the office late that night, she paused before the data system entry, WCSO 01174A. Now final status, active. Criminal indictment filed. After 2 decades, a case once forgotten in Grayton Beach's sand and wind had become a symbol of unrelenting justice, where the smallest traces could still speak, even after waiting more than half a lifetime to be heard. The trial of Harold Dunn opened on the morning of August 7, 2023, at the Walton County Courthouse in Florida, presided over by federal Judge Henry L. McAdams. More than 22 years after the night Anna Nantais vanished, the small courtroom in Santa Rosa Beach was packed. Reporters, the victim's family, Dunn's former colleagues, and local residents who had followed the case for 2 decades. In front of media cameras, Detective Melissa Grant sat in the front row for the prosecution, face calm but eyes still reflecting the fatigue of a long journey. At the opposing table, Harold Dunn, now 68, hair snow white, face deeply etched with wrinkles, wore a gray prison shirt, hands clasped. He bowed his head as he was led in, avoiding the gallery. Lead prosecutor Elaine Rodriguez opened with a presentation lasting over 2 hours, reconstructing the entire chain of events from the 2001 disappearance, the investigative deadlock, to the launch of the Florida Cold Case Review Program. She clearly presented each layer of evidence: DNA samples on the fabric fiber and sleeping bag, recovered GPS and radio data, altered duty logs, Dunn's confession, and finally the discovery of Anna's remains in Point Washington Forest. "This is no longer an accident," Rodriguez said firmly, "but active removal of the victim from safety, concealment of the truth, and burial of the body to evade accountability." She projected excavation scene images on screen: the star-shaped silver necklace, torn sleeping bag, red jacket fragments, symbols now evidence of justice. The 12-person jury listened, many bowing heads when skeletal remains appeared. For the defense, attorney David Mercer, hired by Dunn's family after indictment, argued it was an unintentional tragedy. He did not deny Dunn's presence at the scene or wrongful actions, but insisted no intent to kill existed. Mercer emphasized psychological factors. Dunn was in panic, fearing career ruin for protocol violation, so concealed in hysteria, not malice. He was a man who saved dozens of lives offshore, devoted his life to public service, Mercer said, voice choking, and in one mistaken moment, lost everything. The defense requested reducing the charge from second-degree murder to manslaughter, an unintentional death-causing act. In cross-examination, the prosecution called Detective Melissa Grant to the stand. She detailed the case reinvestigation, DNA discovery, radio data recovery, and the interrogation where Dunn revealed the burial site. When asked her feeling upon finding Anna's necklace, she paused several seconds, then answered, "I wasn't thinking about the case. I just thought finally, that girl was found." The simple words silenced the courtroom. Next, forensic expert Carol Perez presented scientific analysis. Skull injury indicates strong impact, posterior to anterior direction, inconsistent with random doorframe collision. Victim may have been pushed or held forcefully before head contact. This report bolstered the prosecution's argument of force during argument. Attorney Mercer countered with a defense supplemental autopsy, arguing injury mechanism could result from impact while victim attempted to open moving vehicle door. However, prosecution highlighted contradiction. If victim opened door, why no incident report? Instead, log erasure and body burial. The question went unanswered. When Dunn took the stand, he walked slowly, eyes clouded. He maintained no intent, that he panicked and lost control. But when prosecution asked, "Did you have opportunity to call emergency services?" he was silent long, then replied, "Yes, but I didn't." The statement hushed the room. The trial lasted 7 days, with over 30 exhibits presented and 12 witnesses testifying. The jury scrutinized every document, from GPS data to duty log copies, Jim Alt's statement to evidence photos. On August 15th, after 4 hours deliberation, the foreperson stood to read the verdict. Defendant Harold Dunn, guilty of second-degree murder. Sighs echoed in the gallery. Dunn bowed his head, hands clenched tightly, saying nothing. Judge McAdams, sentenced under the maximum penalty for the charge, life imprisonment with parole possibility, after 25 years, merging the concealment of remains count into the primary sentence. As the sentence was pronounced, Anna's family embraced in tears. Jim Alt, the boyfriend suspected for years, stood in the back row, tears streaming. Melissa Grant sat silently, hands gripping the case file on her lap. In her final report to the State Justice Department, she wrote, "Jury finds defendant guilty. DNA, technical data, and confession evidence chains align, proving intentional injury, causing death and remains concealment." Sentence pronounced August 15, 2023. Outside the courthouse, sunset fell over Florida's coast. The crowd departed in silence. 22 years after the dark night at Grayton Beach, justice finally took shape, not loud, not dramatic, but a calm confirmation that truth, however buried, would one day see light. The story of Anna Nantais is not just a criminal case solved after 22 years. It is a mirror reflecting how we live in America today, who we trust, what we trust, and to what extent. Anna vanished at Grayton Beach, in what seemed a safe setting, camping with friends, in a state park, with patrol presence. But the uniformed man, Harold Dunn, was the one who put her in the vehicle and buried the truth in Point Washington Forest. This delivers a clear lesson for today's community. Personal safety should not rely entirely on the assumption, authorities are here, so it's safe, as unchecked power can become a fatal vulnerability. Another lesson is the value of evidence and persistence. This case was solved only because Florida did not discard 2001 evidence. From the green fabric fiber with DNA to the old sleeping bag to B-27 rescue vehicle GPS data, items initially meaningless became keys, unlocking the full truth. On a personal level, it reminds every family that when a loved one disappears or faces violence risk, demand everything be recorded, reported, preserved, not accepting it'll be fine, as answer. At the system level, the lesson for public agencies is transparency is not PR with media, but procedure. If Dunn had not been forced to explain why his duty log times were altered, Anna might still be missing, cause unknown. Finally, this story demands respect for forensic science. Touch DNA technology, thermal drones, old radio recovery, these are no longer crime show fiction. They save ordinary people. Justice is no longer just an oath, it is data. And data only exists if we force systems to keep it honest. If you believe every truth, however buried, deserves to be found, please subscribe to join us in continuing the journey, bringing justice back to life. Thank you for following the Grayton Beach case. See you in the next video, with another story, where the past still whispers, demanding to be heard.